Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm a queer and trans college student, and I'm thrilled to introduce today's panel, which is part of the Father's Friday Summer Series. Today's topic focuses on raising queer children. As a queer and trans person with cishet parents, I cannot over-exaggerate the importance of the following conversation. I think what's so important about conversations like these is that they foster openness about what can be a complicated but very rewarding experience. I've been so proud to watch my parents grow through their support of me, being open to talking with their community about what it's like to raise me, and their support of the LGBTQ community through their parenthood. I'm grateful to Fathering Together for bringing together such an amazing collection of thought leaders, disruptors, and organizations working to change our perspective on how dads engage with their families, communities, and workplaces. I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did.
So hello, everyone, and welcome. We're really excited that you could join us today. My name is Nicki Hengslaben. I'm the Executive Director and Founder at QUEERSPACE Collective. We're an organization providing mentorship support and inclusivity training and really creating networks of support around LGBTQ plus youth. Our mission is to create space where LGBTQ plus youth can show up as their authentic selves and feel really empowered. I'm super excited about this panel because we have folks who are bringing just a really unique perspectives and background to how we show up for trans youth in our community, how we show up for LGBTQ plus youth in general. And so thanks Fathering Together for having us today. Super excited to jump in. I think this discussion is important. It's been important for years, but with the political climate right now, it makes helping folks understand how they can better show up for the queer and trans youth in our community even more important now than ever before. So glad to be here with everyone. And I think to get started, if everyone can introduce themselves, share their pronouns. Mine are she and they. I'm not sure if I said that up front. Share your pronouns and why this topic is really important to you. So maybe we can start off with Matt Kelley.
Hi guys, my name is Matt Kelley. My pronouns are he, him. I am a United Methodist pastor. I currently serve as a hospital chaplain. I've been involved in this work for a long time. More broadly as a clergy person, deeply committed to saying, God loves everybody, and we say everybody, we're not kidding. And the biggest one of the biggest types of exclusion in our world right now is the LGBTQ community. Been involved in advocacy both in the political system and within the church, specifically in the United Methodist Church, where that is a struggle right now. More recently, this work has taken on a very personal dimension because I'm the parent of a transgender child, elementary school age. And so navigating that within our home and family life, and particularly again in the political climate, we are in a state that passed a pretty horrendous anti-trans bill that will affect our lives very directly in the next couple of years. So joining up and building community amongst other families of trans kids as we're facing some really practical questions about some of the care, medical and otherwise, that our kids will need, and can we even do that in our community? How do we band together to work our way through and sometimes around some pretty horrendous systems that have been put around us?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matt. And before we move on to Mandy, can you tell us where you're located?
I'm in Louisville, Kentucky.
Great, thanks. Mandy.
Okay, my name is Mandy and I use she, her pronouns. I have a background in special education. So I spent over a decade in youth ministry and then went into teaching public school, special education, kind of focusing on the autism spectrum disorder. And then again, personally, I also have a 12-year-old trans son. And so just navigating being a parent to a trans kid and all the things that come with it. I have now jumped into a new role professionally as a program manager at QUEERSPACE Collective with Nicki. And we have branched out and expanded to St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is a more rural community. This is our first expansion chapter. And so we're really excited to launch that and kind of get that started in a very intentional way. Just focusing on creating space for queer kids in more rural communities and more central Minnesota, just to have more opportunities and intergenerational love and connection and support to the queer community.
Great. Thanks, Mandy. And last but definitely not least, Danny.
My name is Danny Mercer. My pronouns are he and him. Currently a stay-at-home dad, have been for 14 years, and I've got 4 kids. My personal interest mainly comes from having had a lot of friends throughout my life who were LGBTQIA, but then my oldest son about 3 years ago came out to me as both transgender and as gay. So that's really where it really started hitting home for me. To really, this is a thing that I really need to be active on and working on. I've been doing some work with the JDEI committee with the National At-Home Dad Network, and have been really trying to promote things in our local area. We moved to Stevens Point, Wisconsin, which is very, very literally central Wisconsin, about almost 2 years ago. And it's been a really actually amazing and inspiring journey for us here. I have met so many more people than I would have ever thought, honestly. Not to be completely, looking at everybody as a stereotype, but very rural central Wisconsin. I was like, okay, this is going to be a fight. I'm going to have to push for things. I'm going to have to make things happen. No, other parents have already done it. And so a lot of the stuff that we've had here are just in place and ready to go to support people both through GSA and then other programs around the community.
My 7-year-old is also non-binary, and it's not usual to be in a panel discussion with a group of parents who all have non-cis kids at home. So that's kind of cool. Can you, and whoever wants to jump in first can go, but and I'm going a little off script just based on who's on the conversation now, but can you share a little bit about what some of the challenges have been as parents raising trans kids, and also some of the joys? I'll just start by saying at QUEERSPACE, part of, we started a mentorship program to support the youth. And as the young people started showing up, it was the caregivers, I think, almost started saying, we need more support, or as much support as our young kids need, trying to navigate their own journeys around their kids' journeys, right? Because all of these kids are on their own gender and sexual orientation and identity journeys, and parents are oftentimes trying to keep up with that or understand and want to know how to best be supportive. So I'd love to just hear a little bit from you on some of the challenges that you've experienced and some of the kind of the cool stuff, some of the joy along the way as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I noticed for me, I think with every parent with your child, you want them to be safe. You want them to not get hurt. You want them to be able to go out into the world strong and loving. And just dealing with a child learning to walk, as an example, they're going to fall down. It's just going to happen. And when they get sick, if they have an earache when they're very young, or even when they get sick when they're older, there's nothing you can do. You put them in bed, you get them some liquids or whatever, but you really can't help them. And there's that feeling of helplessness that I ran into often in those times when I just had to sit there and, yeah, you're going to have to wait for the medicine to kick in. You're going to cry. You're going to be upset. When my son told me he was trans, it really put a new perspective on a lot of the potential dangers in the world. There's so much hate, just period, for people that are trans. There are so many terrible, awful things that could happen. I'm not a huge worrier per se, but I do kind of prepare for potential eventualities, like, okay, so you want to climb a tree. Okay, gravity's not your friend. Gravity will pull you down and gravity will hurt you. Just be ready for that. But I'll let you climb the tree anyway. I feel like that's the best way to really realize. In this scenario, it's not quite the same. Getting to the point where my son is he's going to work, or he's even going to school, and having other kids or even adults look at him, talk to him, insult him, use slurs around him. All of those things for me have been probably the biggest pain that has come through all of this. It's just you have to do this. This is who you are. If they don't accept it, we'll do our best to deal with it. I love you. I support you. But yeah, life's going to kick you. It's just going to kick you. And until I don't know when, it'll continue to do so. So that's been I think one of my biggest struggles, I should say, with it.
Is the treatment from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
Any
Yep.
joys you want to comment on?
For me, you want me to keep
Yeah.
talking? Sure. I'll talk all day, you guys. You gotta seriously, you need to cut in.
Why don't you guys share a few joys along the journey too, and then we'll move over to
speak with
Mandy.
kids. All right. I speak with kids all day long. I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad. I don't get to talk to adults. You guys really, you're my lifeline here. The biggest joy for me was, and also a little bit of a difficulty now, I will say my son has already told me I can tell these stories. He's given me full permission. He does cringe a little bit, but I want to say when choosing a name was something that came up, of course. And we had chosen names for him. We had chosen like one of my wife's best friends since childhood, and we'd gotten his godparents, and we did all these things to tell him this is who you are, right? And he comes in, he says, I'm going to change my name. Okay, all right, let's do that. It was a big moment. It hurt a little, especially my wife, because it was her best friend, right? But then the joys from it, and this is the first one, is where I'm taking him to school. We're driving over, and he's very serious. He says, "Dad, I think I've just landed on a name that I want to use." I'm like, "Okay, all right, let's see what you got here, buddy." And he said, "I think I want to be called Shark." And I went, "Shark, like the dorsal? Okay, all right." And I, as a parent, sometimes your kids say something, you shouldn't laugh. You should take them seriously. But that moment was there. But we convinced him away from that one. And we convinced him away from Adonis, which I said, that's an amazing name. That's a huge name. And you're going to have to be like a power lifter working out in the gym 4 or 5 hours a day, because that's who Adonis is. You can't be Apollo was the other one. And I went, my son, you're my son. You're not the god of the sun, and you can't pull off Apollo. Okay. That's not a name humans use. You could name, like, if you had a Rottweiler, you can name Apollo. That's the kind of thing I feel like. Maybe there are people that are named Apollo, and I apologize, but it wasn't for him. Right. But this is the biggest joy. He came to me and he said, I figured out, I want to see what do you think about this one? And he told me, and my great grandmother's maiden name was Price. She named her son, my grandfather, Marvin Price. He named his son, one of his sons, Lawrence Price, my dad, and he named me Daniel Price. And my son said he wanted to be Fabian Price Mercer. And that was I'm crying. That was the greatest moment. It was so touching and so sweet. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, of course, I did name my second son because we thought my first son, was not a boy, but so I named my first son James Price, right? And that was great. But this of him going out of his way to pick that name is for me the greatest joy that I've had since then, honestly. So
thanks for sharing that story and your journey. I'm in tears over you too.
I'll go and say what both a joy and a challenge is just to see the evolution that goes on. This is not something that happens overnight, and certainly not a realization would come to overnight. This was not a thing like other trans folks I've known, where they have known their identity for a long time, but they didn't have terms for it, couldn't say it, whatever. My child, before they were 3, started manifesting some of this stuff. It started with wearing big sister's princess dresses around the house, just playing. And as it goes on, okay, more of a thing. Then beginning to say, some days I feel more like a boy, some days I feel more like a girl. And just watching that happen and seeing the wheels turn and really having to remember to lay back and follow their lead. Because as anything with children, it's a growing thing that they'll explore over time. Some people have used that to put them down. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They're only a kid. Well, kids are smart. Kids are very intuitive. Kids are more emotionally intelligent than adults because they haven't had all this stuff beat out of them or shamed out of them yet. It's also been a challenge because there are people, either in extended family or outside, who want to place labels on things very quickly so they can categorize. Well, are they transgender or what the hell are they? I don't know. It took us a couple of years to even land on saying this child is trans. They socially transitioned this past year in first grade. So used boy pronouns and went to the boys' bathroom in kindergarten. Now girl pronouns in girls' bathroom in first grade, and started growing her hair out and things like that. But hair growth doesn't happen overnight. Identity doesn't happen overnight. We had a person who rather presumptuously said, well, I don't like explaining this, just change their name to a girl name, and here's my suggestion. We're like, their name, their choice, you deal with it, we deal with it, that's it. This is a human being that gets to choose their stuff. They're evolving as time goes. We ask a lot of questions, but we don't say, you must choose this. Ultimately, she chose the pronouns and the bathroom to go to and that sort of thing because she was going to be starting a new grade in school. And because the school had come to us and said, hey, how can we help? How can we be most supportive? Because we know you're not the only family that's navigating these things. And that's the only time we said, hey, what do you want to do? Oh, this. And it was just the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah, they know.
But just having to, hang back a little bit, not ram things into categories like, we've been trained to over time, and to rediscover the joy that I know I didn't always have because the world started to beat this stuff into me as I grew up. So yeah, it's both a joy and a challenge to watch this evolve and to have to let it happen out of my control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm,
just be along for the ride.
Yeah, I love your comment that identity doesn't happen overnight, because I think it just speaks to the journey of young people and even ourselves in our own identities and our own exploration of who we are on this planet and our own journeys and how we support them. So that resonates with me a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I think that a couple things at different times have been challenging. And I think that that's something to note too, is that as the journey goes on, like we find a different challenge that I didn't think that was going to come or thought would take longer or didn't think would be as hard or whatever. In the beginning, I think the biggest challenge was the name change. Personally. And that was just because it was something that I felt like I spent months preparing for your arrival, and I gifted you this name that meant so much to us. And then to have to take it back and say, I'm so sorry, this gift wasn't good enough for you. It didn't fit you. And that was, challenging. As time went on, now it's like, who was that kid? Because that's not who we have. And so my son's name just fits him, and it works for him. And it was a beautiful journey to get there as a family. But initially that was probably the hardest thing for me. I think that as time has gone on, so my son is 12, and kind of to echo Matt, there was never a coming out for my son because he has autism. And so he was late to speak anyway. And so As soon as we kind of understood how he was expressing himself verbally, we were just like, oh, he's autistic and he maybe doesn't understand like the gray areas of this world. And he's just thinking really black and white, like he really likes Paw Patrol and wearing the color blue and does not like dresses. And we were like, oh, it's a sensory thing, whatever. And so we kind of played like the autistic card for a little bit, thinking that he just like didn't understand. But as time went on, our favorite story is that his little sister was 2 at the time and about the same language skills at that time, and started introducing him as her brother. And we were like, oh my gosh, like Eleanor knows, like she knows something that we don't. And they just have like such a connected soul, and they always have. And so that was like a beautiful moment for us to just realize like we need to just shut up and listen to the children because they are telling us something. And that was a huge joy, I think, to kind of come to terms with that. So he socially transitioned at 7. So we've been in this journey for quite a while now, but now hitting other challenging parts like puberty blockers and, just having a preteen in general is really weird, and scary and not fun, and it smells. And so there's just like weird parts of being a parent anyway. And then when like, you're dealing with someone who's also on the spectrum and is also trans, like there's just like a lot of different parts to it. But I will share that probably the biggest joy that I'll carry with me as long as I live is kind of the day that that my son decided he wanted to get his hair cut really short. And he said, I just need it short like dad's. And so I actually did not make him go to school that day. And I sat in bed with him and we watched movies for like 3 hours, and I just cried the entire time. We went to get his hair cut and he left a different person. So again, because of kind of his autism, like that's a huge sensory thing for him. And so previously, like haircuts had been really hard. He even like kicked some hairdressers and stuff just because of the challenge that it brought. And he sat there completely still and was just had this smirk on his face and was smiling the entire time. And so not only like as an autism mom was I like, oh my God, like this is so different and huge. You could just tell it's because he finally felt seen as who he really was. So that was probably my best moment, to just see him change into who he is.
Love that. So one of the questions I wanted to ask is around common misconceptions about LGBTQ plus youth. And I think you've all spoken to what I hear is a very common misconception of like, they're young, they don't know, they're just trying to be like their friends, they're only choosing those pronouns because the neighbor kid does or whatever, right? Like, so that misconception of outside forces are like making them choose this, right? As opposed to just kind of knowing, because kids just know, or at least that's been my experience, and it sounds like yours as well. What are some other misconceptions that you feel like folks have about LGBTQ plus youth?
I've had 1 or 2 people, again, this is in church spheres, and it frankly says a hell of a lot more about the person asking the question than it does about anybody else. What about, oh, well, were they sexually abused? Did this and that happen? And go, okay, why you jump into that? Assuming that it is somehow some kind of trauma response, as opposed to, no, this is just an expression of truly who I am. That's and things around that. Again, this is in a religious sphere, and we're not in a particularly conservative religious denomination, but churches are what they are. People making some assumptions, asking some questions. or even absorbing some things that they hear in some right-wing media that is just, even they don't realize how hateful some of it is until they start asking questions or repeating it and then realizing, oh God, what have I absorbed here?
Mhm.
Yeah, the belief that it's a mental illness. That was, I
Yes.
just discovered that people think that maybe 2 years ago. I've never even considered that that would be something someone would think. But it's, they basically said, well, you're supporting her mental illness. And I have a fair familiarity with mental health, mental illness. And I was like, what? No, this has nothing to do with anything you're talking about. That was a big one for me. And it took me a while to kind of get through that. And then the other part was that, and this hit me at the very beginning. And I fortunately had I would say a mentor who was at PFLAG or with PFLAG, and they were local and their son was trans. And I was like, I just don't want to be an idiot. I love him. I don't care. It's good, but I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. And she corrected me at least 3 times in our first conversation by reminding me that there's a big difference between being trans and being gay, because my mindset was, okay, so you're trans, of course you're gay. No, no, dummy. They have nothing to do with each other. And literally she told me 3 times, and like the 3rd time I went, oh, light bulb. Okay. But I find that is a big thing that I hear from a lot of people. And a lot of times it's they're trying to be loving, they're trying to be accepting, they're trying to reach out for more knowledge in a lot of ways, but they're doing it from a preconceived notion or even a willful ignorance about some things. And they'll say, well, I mean, is he going to get married? Can he have kids and things like that? And I'm like, I don't know if he wants to. I mean,
Yeah.
what are your kids going to get married and have kids? I don't know. I mean, he could shack up with anybody he wants. I don't need him to get married. I would love, because I'm like, dad is my thing. I would love for all my kids to have a bunch of babies just so that I can take care of the babies, because I love babies. But if he goes on and, he's solo for the rest of his life, if he's happy, what do I care? Why do I need to, formulate no, this is the path to happiness. No, that might be my path to happiness. And that's a lot of assumption that I get from people, again, in that area, is like, well, what's he going to do? Whatever he wants, whatever he loves.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you want for your kid? So.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I would say that I think a lot of folks think, like, if you have a trans kid, like, just with all the stuff that's going out there, like politically, that, well, they just shouldn't be in sports then, or they shouldn't really get to do what they love because it's not fair. And that's really scary, because we know already that trans kids have just such a higher percentage of suicidal ideation, about mental health issues. And so when we start taking away things that they love and things that bring them joy that have nothing to do with sex, gender orientation, whatever, it's just something that brings a human joy, is continuing their struggle. When we talk about equity and equality and all those wonderful things, we're literally saving trans kids' lives, because we are giving them the experiences that every human should get to experience. And that is validation and support and love and growth and all those wonderful things. And so I think that even if people are like, I don't really care that these people are trans, I think that when they get really stuck on that, fairness is super challenging, and something that I wish that we could just educate faster on, so that our kids have just a better chance of happiness.
Yeah. And both building on the theme that you're both talking about around just treating them like humans, right? Like they're just humans like any other kid on this planet with the same dreams and aspirations and loves and hates and everything else that any other kid is experiencing. But
Yeah,
just
a lot of what we've been saying that I've heard y'all saying is just how being a parent is. I mean, that's like my quote unquote career for a very long time. So it's like the only focus I have, unfortunately, but I see it as, yeah, that's being a parent. Yeah, that's what you do. You let them make that decision. You let them decide. And that realization, like from generations back when it was children should be seen and not heard. Right. And that kind of had been pervasive for several generations now, of the idea that kids don't know what they're talking about. You know, he's just a kid. He doesn't even know how to wipe his butt. What does he know? You know, whatever. Realistically, kids know so much more, especially about who they are. And who are we to tell them that? You know, as a parent, that's kind of what, you know, like Matt, like you said, you're kind of watching that evolution. You're watching that change and you're standing back and going, okay, well, you show me where we're going. You walk that. That's your path. I will be here to hold your hand or support you or carry you across the rapids, whatever we need to do. But this is your path. You tell me if we're going left or right, or, you know, just straight through the woods, whatever. That's really a part of parenting. And it's such just a circle back when you have kids that are trans or that are queer.
And exposing them to, you know, the dangers and sometimes horrors of the world is a balancing act too. My trans child is 7. You know, I'm not going to pretend there's nobody out there that doesn't hate her for who she is. I'm also not going to sit her down in front of a computer screen and show her some of these crackpot TV preachers or whatever. But our local Pride festival is this coming weekend, and we're going to march in the parade, and she's going to be on my shoulders, tossing out Skittles, rainbow candy. We thought that was her mom's idea. I thought it was brilliant. But inevitably, she's been to Pride before when she was much younger. This might be the first time when she can see again some fool with a sign and a bullhorn, and might start to make that connection. And so that's I'm so curious, a little scared, all of the above about, you know, conversations I'm probably gonna have Saturday night with this kid. Oh, you know, that, but Daddy, you've got Jesus on your t-shirt too, and you're doing this, and that person does there too, and they're, you know, screaming with a vein out in their forehead, and what's that about? That'll be we should probably have a follow-up conversation a week from now, and I can tell you what that was like.
Yeah. Well, and Matt, you're in Kentucky, and there's been a lot of anti-trans legislation in your area. Can you speak a little bit about, I don't, you know, we never want to get too political, but I do think that these are platforms to share what's happening politically a little bit, but more importantly, how that impacts families directly when these misconceptions and this hateful, you know, stuff is happening out in our communities. What has it been like for your family?
Well, so it is political in that it's involved legislation and that sort of thing, but the well-being of my child and the well-being of my family is not, never will be a political issue. It is a human being issue. It's not even an issue, it just is.
Yeah.
The child, it's family. But unfortunately, yes, it has made it there with solutions looking for problems, put it that way, in terms of bathroom bills, in terms of sports, in terms of, on the one hand, taking away a parent's right to choose something for their child in terms of medical care, while at the same time allowing any fool to, you know, yank books out of my kid's school library in the name of parental choice, which, I mean, makes no sense whatsoever, but that's what's going on. But to watch that, to see that happen, to be involved in the advocacy, and I would say just personally for me as a white, fairly privileged person, to then watch your family's well-being being debated by other people who, frankly, at the end of the day, do not care about you one way or the other. It's a token in their power game, and watch it being debated and voted on. is
Yeah.
not something I've ever experienced. So it gives me a lot of empathy and solidarity with folks who deal with that every day in so many aspects of their lives. But it is very hard to see that where I do have some voice, but ultimately I don't get to stand there in the state legislature and vote.
Mhm. Yeah. Mandy, we're in a trans refuge state. Do you want to comment at all on what it's like to be in Minnesota and kind of maybe some of the privileges that we have here in our state or what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally, our family feels really good to be here, but at the same time, just the fear, just from hearing about other states, we're like, well, could this change overnight? Like, it's really scary, and I think it Minnesota, we've been very fortunate in Minnesota to have these, medical um, providers available to us, mental health providers available to us. But at the same time, it's already really hard to get in. And so when we're talking about helping people that are fleeing from states like Missouri and Florida and whatever, for safety to literally save their children, as a parent, I'm like, yes, please come here. Like, we can love and support you, take you under our wing. But I'm also like, please don't take my kid's spot because he also needs help. And there's only so much help that can be provided. I know that there are so many organizations that are working on this kind of on the back end right now. Like, how can we get more providers, knowing that there are going to be thousands and thousands of families that come to Minnesota. So I can't let myself lose sleep over it. And I'm feeling very grateful that we are here and that we're in a state where most of the time it feels really safe to be here, or I guess as safe as we can be. But there's not a day in any parent of a trans or queer child's life that you're not afraid. And that takes a toll on us as parents, and it affects our parenting and all those things. Is just a reminder that we are real people, we are real families, and that government can change those things, and they're not.
Yeah, we definitely need more resources across the country and even here in Minnesota for sure. So what advice do you have for parents of LGBTQ plus youth, or maybe even more importantly, what advice do you have for parents whose kids are cis or straight and not part of the LGBTQ plus community, who have friends who are part of the LGBTQ plus community or are influencing young people, who have queer and trans youth in their lives? Any suggestions for the parents out there, both of the queer kids and the non-queer kids?
I guess so I have spent the last 5 years in public school. And so I've spent a lot of time around kids that are cis and white and straight and privileged and all those things. And there are very, very little times that I'm not like, they are doing it so much better than we are as adults. And so being a parent is guiding and loving and supporting and validating. And if we are doing that to even our cis straight kids, they are going to love and support other people because we are teaching them how, and we don't even necessarily need to say the words, because we are guiding them into the way of respect. And but I will tell you that it sounds scary to let your kids go to school and just be afraid of like the people's opinions out there. But for the majority of it, like, our youth are very accepting and things are changing. And that, as a teacher and a mom and a human being in this country, feels really good. But I guess my advice for kids or for parents that have trans or queer kids is just they don't need anything special than other kids. They need to be loved and validated, and they need to be they need to have a parent that gives them a voice and that does not dictate their future. And those are all things that I had hoped to be as a parent regardless. And it just, when you have a trans kid, it just looks more evident because you can see that I am allowing my kid to be trans because that's how I love him.
Yeah, I'd say in a lot of ways it's magnifying a lot of the things you learn as a parent. That it is not about you, that they're going to teach you a whole lot more than you'll ever teach them, and that it's really up to you to be present, to listen, and to try to know what it is that they need, and understand the difference between your needs or probably just even preferences, whatever my preference might be on a particular day, and what their deep need might be, and understanding the difference between those two things. I'm a chaplain and a pastor. I listen to people for a living, and truly listening, deep listening for understanding, active listening is a lot of work. It takes a lot of self-checking to go, what's going on within me right now, and paying attention to that as I'm taking in what the other person is saying so that I absorb it and don't mix up with my stuff. So there's a lot of self-realization that has gone into that with me as well. Dealing with grief, as I have accepted that I don't have a son, I have a third daughter, and what is it that I have lost? What is it that I truly didn't lose? What am I truly gaining? All the things in there. There's a lot of internal work that goes, whether you have a child who is LGBT, whether you're just raising a child who is growing up in a world where they're much more used to people being different and accepting that and celebrating that than the world even we grew up in, certainly than our parents or grandparents did. So really watching and learning from them, and really truly taking a lot of cues from the generation, letting them teach us, because they're a lot smarter than we are in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I love that.
And a big part of that teaching and raising them is raising good people. That's what your end result is. You know, you want to have children that go out into the world and they're good, capital G. And that means including people, understanding from a very young age that there are people in the world who won't fit in our male, female, man, woman. No, this person is gender fluid, or this person is non-binary. This is who they are. He or she or they are just as I guess real would be the best way to put it, as anyone else you might see. If you find stories about people, that story can be about any person of any gender and of any orientation, any identity. This isn't just a binary male female life that we live anymore. That's honestly, it's very old fashioned, and it was never correct, which is another part of, I think, what a lot of people don't, I hear it a lot that, well, it's just, this is something that's very important to you right now because you're going through it. This is a new thing. And why are we seeing so many? Why is it suddenly? We never let people be who they were. We told people who they were. People didn't have the words. I love reading. I love, having a large vocabulary. I really like picking up new words, and intersex is a new one. Right. And then before that, probably the word I learned previous to that was non-binary. These are things that they didn't exist as a word when I was, a child, but there were people living their lives in that would fit that word. Just no one knew what it was, or no one allowed them to say it. So for my advice for any parents who want to try to build up and be more of an ally and to help the people around them is, one, teaching their kids that these things exist. It just is. And then learning as Mandy said earlier, they just need love. If you have, you know, your kid brings home kids, you know, kids get off the bus, or all the neighborhood kids come over to your house, whatever it is, you're having dinner or whatever, and for, you know, 5, 6 kids, they're just kids. Don't
Right.
try to pigeonhole them and make them like, oh, no, what are you? No, I need to know what you are. Well, you don't get to know what I am. You can just call me they, and we'll be fine. And that's fine, you know? So I think that's a big part of it, is in raising good kids. You want your kids to be strong. You want your kids to be loving and kind. You want your kids to be intelligent and knowledgeable. All of that comes from the fact that facing the reality of life as we see it around us. You know, this is actually how we live. This is the existence of human beings right now, and has always been that way. We just have never allowed people to say it.
Yeah, that's so right. I think too, just to add to that, we don't always understand. And as parents, we don't always understand. And as humans, we don't always understand the journey that our kids are on, and what the terminology means, or, you know, what Z, her pronouns, like, what does that mean, right? And we don't have to. I think that's been some of my biggest learnings over the last few years as I've been working with queer and trans youth, is like, we don't have to understand. All we have to do is just show up and love them and give them space to be themselves. And if we don't get it, like, there's this great big search engine called Google, where we can go learn more about it later, right? And we can educate ourselves. But in the time and space outside of like the engagement or interaction with them, right? And our how we can show up for them is just to let them be humans and raise good humans. And I feel like that's the common thread that came out from kind of all of what you all shared about how to best show up as parents for queer kids, and also for non-queer kids. So I love that. We're getting close to being the end of time. So I think maybe we'll just wrap up with this last question. It's Pride Month, which is a time when we really, as queer community, celebrate ourselves and our young people and our families. And hopefully we're doing this at other points of the year and not just in June. But I'd love to hear from you either in June or throughout other parts of the year. How do you really celebrate and support the queer and trans youth in your life, and or maybe suggestions on how we support them more broadly? Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
I'm gonna stand up and show you my shirt. Okay.
Okay. Oh,
Nice.
oh, I love
So it's
that.
my son bought this for me, and I had one previously, which was a large smiley face that was the color of a rainbow with a mustache, and it said "Free Dad Hugs." And I wore that to Pride in Atlanta and wore it around. And probably 2 years ago now, he bought me this shirt, and it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the transgender colors. And it took me, sadly, I'm a professional dad, and I could not get the joke that it's a Tyrannosaurus, right? Yeah, I'm an idiot, you know. And he looked at me and goes, "Dad, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I love it, man." And I wear it all the time. And then I wear my proud parent button, which also has the entire rainbow. And I'm learning, honestly, how much rainbow there is and what all the colors are. So I don't want to try to explain what it is. But one of the things that I do is I wear this button around all the time, and I have another one on my backpack. And then I have a proud, what's it called? Ally Dad Ally, I think, is a bumper sticker on my car. Have 2 of those saying that kind of that thing, so that everywhere we go in town, whether it's at the school or if it's at an event in the community, whatever it is, I try to make myself available and a safe person to talk to, if anything, you know, if whatever it might be. And this is the people in the Midwest are a lot of times very reticent and a little bit, they don't wave at you in the neighborhood. I don't get this. I'm from Georgia. We drive through the neighborhood, I wave at everybody, and they're like, "Who's that crazy man waving at me?" So they're not quite as obvious about things as I am. And there aren't as many extroverts here, I think. And I'm incredibly extroverted. And so everybody I meet, I will be there, and I'll have my button on, at least, no matter what shirt I'm wearing, or like I said, on my backpack, and just being there the whole time. I love giving people hugs. I like being there for someone of any age who's at a point where they miss their dad, and it could be that their dad has passed away, or their dad, their mom and dad got a divorce, or the most tragic I feel is that your parent just does not accept you, will not listen to you. And that breaks my heart. I mean, I've talked to some of the children that my son knows, and the fact is their mother, their father do not accept, will not allow them, have kicked them out of the house even for things like this. And that breaks my heart. I mean, I will say, I love everybody. I really do. But I may not love your choices, and I may not love your attitude. But when it comes to your children, no matter what my kids do, I may not like their choices, but I still love them. And for parents that have said, no, I don't even want to talk to you, to imagine what that feels like as a child. I want as much as I can to be obvious and even a little outrageous sometimes about being there for the people in my community, the young people, the children who just need somebody that will listen to them, will accept them, and will love them, Yeah. So that's my shirt is my favorite thing. That's why I wore it today, actually, so I could show all y'all. Because I'm so proud of him for giving it to me. And everywhere I go, people see it and they tell me, oh, I love your shirt. And you can always tell there's an amount of almost reticence that they're almost, can I say it's okay that I love your shirt? There's still that moment of, I don't know if I'm actually okay to say that I even approve of that, much less that I might fall under that, umbrella of life that all of that, is included in.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I'll show you the pin that I wear around the hospital. Oh, there it is, around the hospital.
Nice.
Yeah.
Same thing. And I've some people who like to be contrarian, and I think there's some merit to the question about is performative allyship. Or are you just doing this as just slacktivism? Or are you doing more than just posting on Facebook? Fair question. However, the environment, particularly now, given what a lot of state legislatures and frankly national people have been doing, is so damn toxic that a little bit of performativeness and being out there in our allyship is really needed for people to know that they are loved, that somebody is safe. We need Pride Month because there's so much that is bad and negative and dangerous for those people that we love out there. So don't hold back. Don't worry. Yeah. Don't worry if somebody's gonna roll their eyes and say you're just doing whatever to be cool, going with the culture. Who cares? Somebody needs to see that, to know that day that they're loved, because they're feeling low, and that might literally get them through the day alive. So be out with it.
I love that. And as someone who's been part of the queer community myself since the 90s, seeing rainbow flags and stickers in restaurants, bars, coffee shops, on people, maybe even before it was popular to do so. I mean, it's always a signal to me if I go into like any city or anywhere, I'm like, oh, okay, my wife and I can walk into this restaurant or this place and feel included and feel welcomed here. And when you don't know a city and you don't really know, you don't know. And so it does cause a little fear, and maybe less so because I'm older now and I'm a little less like, can just feel like I can manage things easier. But especially when I was younger, like those are really big signals. So I think for young people, especially, people see our QUEERSPACE logo out in the community, young people, they're like, they just kind of smile at me like, oh, okay, I see you. I'm like, hey, I see you. And that's beautiful. I love that. Mandy, did you have any thoughts on this?
So as a straight cis person, a lot of times I feel like Pride Month isn't for me. And it's not, but what it means to me is so special, because our son can be loved and supported 1,000% by his dad and I. but there are experiences that we can't share with him. And so there are just things we cannot teach him about being trans because we have not experienced that, right? And so the month of Pride now to me is just filled with such gratitude for the community that I know will take him in and love him. And as a parent, there's nothing better than knowing when you can't do something that you can put all of your trust into other people, knowing that they will have your kids back and that they're going to be okay. And even when you're not there, and not only will they not be okay, but they will be revitalized by this community. And so this month is so, like I said, just so filled with gratitude for me. And especially to thanking the people that have paved the way for my son to make his life a little bit easier. And the people that were not afraid to speak out and to know that parents would have questions. And, like when we had to change his name, I had to do very little research because people just flew in with all this information. This is what you have to do. This is your first step. This is your second step. And so that gratefulness is just very astounding, I guess, in the month of June. And I am always reminded of the folks that are ready to take my son in and help change the world.
Well, that sounds like a perfect note to wrap up this beautiful conversation. This has just been a complete pleasure to talk with all of you and hear your stories and suggestions and advice. I love this Fathering Together platform. I think it's really amazing. I'm grateful that we got to be here today. And fatheringtogether.org, you can go and learn more about the different offerings that the organization has and different ways to get involved. And if you want to learn more about QUEERSPACE Collective, we have resources on our website. We are based in Minnesota, but we do inclusivity nationally. But we just have a lot of resources on our website too. So if you are a parent and you need some additional support, you can go to our website. It's queerspacecollective.org. And yeah, really grateful to be here with you today. This has been a really beautiful and energizing conversation.